Hello, State Senator J.D. Mesnard here from District 13 with another legislative update. So we're approaching the point in the session where we're facing deadlines for getting bills introduced. So you are going to see a flurry of bills dropped over the next few days. So some of those last-minute bills may have a hard time getting a hearing because of the timeline. But you're going to see probably upwards of hundreds of bills over the next week or so between the House and the Senate deadlines. So lots of bills to comb through for those of you interested. I did want to mention that one of mine that was already introduced and is going to have a hearing in the near future is actually a referral to the ballot for the voters in the next election. It's SCR 1009. And what this aims to do is address what really is a loophole that unfortunately exists in our state constitution when it comes to assessing fees. What I mean is that in the early 90s, the voters passed a higher threshold on the legislature of a 2/3 supermajority that's required anytime we're going to increase taxes or increase fees and assessments, which is another form of taxation, essentially. Well, what we've seen happen over the years is that the legislature, to avoid this 2/3 vote, will sort of delegate out to a state agency director or some department the assessment of a fee. And while this has happened in the past with smaller dollar amounts, what we've seen over the last number of years is these have added up to not just tens of millions of dollars, but hundreds of millions of dollars in fees that the legislature has delegated out to these agencies. So my proposal would eliminate that loophole. It would say that fees which have been excluded from this requirement in some circumstances, we're going to tighten that down to make sure that any fees that are assessed on the people of Arizona have to be approved by a 2/3 vote of the legislature. So look for that one coming down the pike. The other thing I'll quickly mention is there has been some confusion about, I've heard people say, well, we heard that Governor Hobbs lost $350 million in the budget. That is not what has happened entirely. What has happened is there is a supplemental request that's come down in the current year's budget for expenses that have exceeded what we anticipated. And it is about 340-ish million from her perspective. It is true that separate from that, in the out years of the budget, she did neglect to incorporate caseload growth and access to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. And that is pretty embarrassing for their budget people. But those are two things. I don't know if they've been conflated or what, but there's been some confusion out there, so I wanted to clarify that. Anyway, that's all for this week's update. Until next one, God bless.